Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I've got an exciting interview to share with you. Lewis is back to share his last encounter with us, one that has haunted him for a couple of months now. So much so that he did not want to share the last 2 times he was on, because in his eyes, if he didn't believe it happened or could have happened, how will anyone else? Before we get into that interview, a couple links. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All those links are in the description below. I also have a second channel for creepypasta, fanfiction, and scary voice acting, stories that they really don't fit on this channel. Now, if that's anything that you're into, follow that link and give those stories a listen. You may just like what you hear. Now I've taken enough of your time, and I know Lewis is patiently waiting. Let's get on to this interview, shall we? All right, guys. Today I am with a good friend and subscriber, a gentleman that I've had on the show twice. He is here again, Lewis, and he is going to share an encounter with us that he had just recently, and another one, but he didn't really feel up to sharing it because it had just happened. And the way he told me was, if I can't believe it happened, how am I supposed to think other people will? So, guys, with great honor, I give you Lewis. Lewis, how are you?
Doing okay. Hope you are.
Good. Good. So it's always a pleasure having you on. And like I normally do, I'm giving you the floor to share your encounters with us, my friend.
Okay, thank you. And hello to everyone. I'm sorry it took me so long to get to this point to share this encounter. This is something that I hope no one ever has to go through, because it affected me in a lot of different ways. I'm going to start out. I have a fenced-in backyard, and from the back corner of the left side of the house, the fence is 50 feet. And then it goes across the back, and it's 150 feet, and it has a fence gate in the center of it. And I was weed eating. It was before dark. I have a couple mountains behind me, and the sun had went down behind the mountains. But it wasn't completely dark yet. I would say it's probably about 8:30-ish. I was just trying to get everything done so that I could mow the next day. And I was weed eating and had went down to one side and got to the corner. That's the closest to the woods. And I have a wraparound driveway that I built that goes between the fence and the woods so that I can go all the way around my house. I built that when I moved in. I was weed eating, and the dogs, I have 3 dogs. I have a dog named Roxy. She's a full-blooded red pit bull. She weighs about 48 pounds. I have another female, and her name is Pitsy, and she is a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And those dogs are from Africa, and she weighs about 96 pounds. They use those dogs in Africa to track lions. Really good dogs. And the other dog I have is his name is Bean. That's a funny name for him, but I got him from a friend that had named him. He was used to that name, and and he is brindle. He looks like a pinto bean, his coloring. And he's a pit bull too, and he weighs in at about 90 pounds. So Pitsy, she's the biggest, and she's really quiet. She's one of those dogs that's quiet, but when she gets upset, you know it. And Roxy, she's the smallest out of all of them, but she's actually the boss. But anyway, all three dogs were inside the fence and were at the corner and barking, just going crazy. Well, I thought it was maybe because of me weed eating, and the thought never come through my mind that, they got over that a long time ago. The weed eater never bothered them. They always would, just go away from it when I was weed eating. Well, next thing I know, I have pressure being pushed up against me, and I'm facing the dogs. And when the pressure comes up against me, I try to turn around, and I only get halfway around. And it was probably about 40 pounds of pressure that was being pushed up against me, enough to where my upper shoulders were against the bar and the fence was being pushed in, the chain link. And from everything that's always happened here, and just with everything going on in the world today, while I'm on my property, I'm always armed. I had my Glock 21 45 caliber on my side in a belt strap on my right. Well, when I turned to face forward, I seen what it was. I knew what it was, but I didn't want to think about what it was. And I don't think I was as much scared as I was angry at myself, because I let this thing sneak up behind me like that. And I didn't pay attention to what, the dogs were telling me right then. And so this thing was pushed up against me, and strong odor of urine. I mean, so strong, I burn your eye urine. And I was scared in a way. And the thing that bothered me the most is I could not access my firearm because it was pushed up. My right arm was down. I still had the weed eater in my hand. Actually, I had the weed eater in my hand the whole time this happened. Running. And I tried to pull my arm up, and it was probably a good thing I didn't, because if I would have, I would have tried to unsnap my holster. And so this thing was just standing beside me, and the height of it, I'll tell you the dimensions here in a little bit. Me being a law enforcement, I, go back and check these things, and but I can say it was close to my chest, and I'm 6 foot tall. And so it went forward just a little bit, and I tried to pull my arm out, and then it put its head down and backed up. And when it backed up, I was able to pull my arm out, and I wasn't going to put my hand back down there and try to get my pistol, because this thing was not being aggressive to me. I didn't know what it was going to do to me. And I just remember all three of my dogs had went up into the middle of the yard and were just sitting there, just side by side sitting, weren't making a sound. And this thing almost sounded like it had a murmur to it, like a cat. And as it backed up, it put its head down and nudged its head into me. And I put my hand on the top of its head to try to push it away. And that's when I felt the fur, and it was stiff. It was almost like pine needles. That's the closest thing I can come to. It wasn't soft like it appeared to be. And also I noticed while it was there beside of me, it had what I thought at first when I had talked to Jeff, I thought it might have been like mange, but it looked more like this thing had been in a battle with something, because there was fur ripped out of it. I could tell, I would say it probably weighed about 200 to 250 pounds. It wasn't a massive, it was skinny. It looked almost sickly. And I pushed his head away, and it never looked at me. It never put its head up and looked at me. And it just started walking away from me. And it started walking towards, just down the side of the fence. And I'm still standing there, not moving. Weed eater's still running. Still haven't pulled my weapon. And so I'm just standing there watching what's going on. And I can still smell that strong odor, and at the same time, I'm shaking, and I'm looking around to see if there's more behind me or anywhere around me, not knowing what to do. And this thing gets up to, I'm still standing there, and it gets up to the fence gate. And Pitsy, bless her heart, she walked down to the gate, and they both stood there, and that's when I got a side profile. It turned its body about 3/4 of the way, and I could see its face and its snout. The thing that was unusual about this is the other ones that I had seen, the snout on this thing kind of reminded me of a horse. Not as long, but it was wide. I could see its canines. Its mouth never opened up to growl, or they say they smile. And the other ones that I'd seen in previous, none of that. Nothing aggressive. And Pitsy got to the gate, and it stuck its nose up to the gate because the snout was so wide it couldn't get in between the poles. But her and Pitsy were sniffing each other, and it just kept backing up a little bit, and Pitsy kept sticking her nose farther and farther because she could get her nose through that opening. And then this thing took its hand and stuck up at the top of Pitsy's head and put its hand on her head and pushed her head down, and then let her head come back up, and they were just looking at each other, and Pitsy had her snout through, and it just immediately grabbed her by the snout with its hand, and it was totally wrapped around her, and automatically Pitsy started whining. She started trying to pull away. She had all 4 of her feet dug in. I mean, the ground was tore up from where she was at. And bless her heart, she, only way I know to say it is she defecated all over herself. And it was all over, and she urinated all over herself. And she was sitting in it because she was trying to bulldoze her way backwards away from this thing. And she was stepping all in it, and it was going all over, and I really didn't notice that until after, when I had to clean her up. But I immediately unsnapped and unholstered my weapon, and I loaded my own shells, and, I'm pretty sure the 45 I had I could have done some serious damage, because I reloaded all my shells and I loaded them to the max. So they're traveling 1,340 feet per second. And I had a clear shot at this thing's head and body. And when I started yelling, it didn't pay me any attention. I started running up on it, and I got up within like 10, 15 feet. And Pitsy was whining and crying, and my other dogs were barking at this time and running around going crazy. So I don't know why I did not shoot the animal. I had 1 in the pipe, 13 in the clip, 14. I'm pretty sure with that 45, I probably could have done some serious damage. But I fired 2 rounds off, and as immediately as I fired them 2 rounds off, down at the ground about 3 foot from it, and immediately turned her loose, she fell backwards, and this thing turned its head and looked at me and growled. Did not show me any teeth. It just made the growling sound. And I just stood there. And this whole incident was probably 45 seconds from beginning to end. And this thing turned, and another thing I noticed too, on the back of its left ear, there was a chunk taken out of its ear, like something had bitten it. Now, I don't know whether it was male or female. I didn't see anything to show me either way. It stayed on all 4s. But for some reason, I think it was female. Now, I'm not sure. I could be wrong. But it looked to be old. It did have some gray in it. And I don't know if it used to have maybe been a male that was dominant, and that's why all the chunks of fur was taken out of it. Maybe, there was a new alpha or something. I'm not sure. I really don't know what happened. But this thing turned and had its tail between its legs, almost like its feelings was hurt, and slowly walked down the other side of my yard behind my spray booth into the pines and was gone. And I went, and keep in mind, I'm still holding the weed eater in my left hand, and it's still running this whole time. I mean, that's how I was so fixed on everything going on. It was like I had tunnel vision. And I could not believe what had just happened. And I went in and I put my weed eater down inside the fence, and I checked Pitsy out to make sure she was okay. She wasn't injured anyway, except for her feelings. She I had to clean her up. She had feces all over her hind end and legs, and from where it scared her, I guess, so bad. It traumatized her. Now, I know now, usually when I would let the dogs out, they'd all, when I opened the back door, they'd fly down the stairs and out into the yard. Now, both the other dogs do that, but not her anymore. When I open the door, she flies to the end of the steps and just stands there and looks around. So I don't know if that's something she'll eventually get over. But about, I guess, 2.5, 3 weeks after that, the other thing that happened was I was sitting in the house. I had a load of laundry going on. I was watching TV. I was waiting on some clothes to dry so I could fold them up. And I heard something hit my roof, and I got a metal roof on my house. And I heard it bounce around on the roof and go off and fall off the house. Excuse me. And all my dogs just started going crazy, and they run down to the corner of the fence and was barking. Well, I walked outside, and I'm like, what's going on? Because I figured the dogs had, I didn't know that something had hit the house at that time. I just thought that I've got, and right now it's empty. It needs a liner. So I figured one of them had ran into the metal and it flexed or something. I didn't know what had happened. And they had ran down to the corner of the fence. And I started yelling at them, what are y'all barking at? What's going on? And I still didn't see anything at this time. And all of a sudden, a stick about 2 foot long comes flying over and hits the siding on the side of my house. And I look down in the woods. I'm still not seeing anything. And I stand there for a minute, and I hear a crack. And I look up on one of the trees, and about 25, 30 yards into the woods, there's one, and it's black. And it's got its one arm wrapped around the tree. Its feet dug into the tree. And it's breaking off pieces of a tree limb. And when it threw that, I knew right then, I said, okay, I'm not dealing with this. So I come in and got my AR-47. It's a AR-15 platform, but it's chambered in 7.62 by 39. And I went out and aimed about 6 inches above his head and blew a big chunk of wood out. Now, this thing came down, this tree just slid down. It was about 30, 40 feet up in the tree. And this was a oak tree. And it just comes straight down. And when it hit the ground, it was gone. And that's the last thing that, I actually had happen here, right now. But
those are a couple of terrifying encounters. I know the first one, when you reached out to me about 2 months back, because you and I we've been speaking about 2 years now. And I know that the last encounter, when it pushed you against the fence, you almost didn't want to share it with me because you were still, questioning, did this really happen? And I mean, the dimensions of it, of what you said to me, was like 46 inches at the shoulders. And
yes, at the shoulders, 46 inches in height, right below right at my chest level.
and about 7.5 feet long. We're talking about something, if it stood up, 8.5 feet.
Right.
And, you were like...
But it never stood up.
Right.
Yeah.
You were like, if I can't believe this happened, how the hell am I supposed to think that anybody else will? And, just by coming on those 2 times, you've dealt with it, and it slowly came out. I'm glad you were able to share it with us, but it's a very bizarre and crazy encounter, because it was almost like it reached out for you to notice it.
Yeah.
With no reason, and it's got a large bite behind its left ear. It's a very strange encounter. And I like how you said that when you touched it, its fur felt like pine needles, because the guy in Virginia, when the farmer guy shot one and he went and visited it, he said he touched the fur and it was not soft like what you'd think. It was like getting poked. And I used that exact scenario. I was like, well, was it like, touching pine needles? And he goes, exactly, like you're touching a Christmas tree.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember that one woman that says she ran into him, and it felt like her, I think, father or grandfather's beard. Yeah,
from England, yes. Yeah.
And, I was the first one that told you. Hold on, sorry. Got a thing going on right here.
All right, guys, sorry I had to hit pause really quick. That was a storm warning. Lewis lives in North Carolina, and they're having a storm coming up right now. So, where were we? The lady from England. And, yeah, you were the first one to tell me that that's how it felt like to you. And I was shocked, because there was 2 other people, and I hadn't shared that
after
yet.
I told you that.
Yeah.
That's... when looking at them, and this one was different than the one that I encountered in Rowan County. That one, I was cooking on the deck. I mean, that one was terrifying. I had nowhere to go, and this one, even the fur. It looked the same, but the one in Rowan County, I don't know whether it was just a light, but it looked like fiber optics, kind of, up around the mane. It was like turned rainbow colors as the light hit it. That was a weird situation.
Right.
But it was very aggressive. But this one, I don't know why it did that. And like I said, it bothered me because I let this thing sneak up behind me. And that's something that I'm trained not to do. I just let my guard down, and I had my dogs letting me know, and I couldn't tell you if nothing felt different. I mean, you hear how some people say it gets quiet and it's like different, there's no insects or nothing. But like I said, I had the weed eater going the whole time, and I can't believe I didn't even lay it down. I guess I was in shock. That's the only thing I can say, but I had a hard time dealing with whether I was going to tell my encounter, because it's such a crazy encounter.
Yeah.
And another thing, I washed my clothes twice and could not get that smell out of my jeans and my T-shirt, and I had to throw them away. I could not get that smell out.
Did the stench stick around your yard for a little bit, or was it?
Oh yeah.
It was.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Same with Pitsy.
Yeah.
you know, I washed her. I ended up washing her with putting tomato juice on her, like they say for a skunk. But the final thing I did was wash her in Dawn dishwashing liquid, and that seemed to take care of it. But it would not take it out of my clothes.
Right.
I mean, this thing was pushed up against me really hard. And the thing about it, it was almost like it wanted me to give it attention, like it wanted me to. That's the thing that really got me. You hear about these things, you know, and being so vicious, and you know, I've seen that side of them. Now, I don't know why it did that. It could have been dying. I don't know. I mean, it looked pretty bad, but I'm sure if it wanted to put an ass whooping on me, it could have. You know, but there was something else I wanted to let everybody know. You hear people talking about all of their hands, their front paws. There's like hands, and they look like raccoons. I have like maybe 10 or 15 squirrels that I feed sometimes out in the front yard, and I go to the park, and these squirrels know me, and they come up to me, and they will take the peanut out of my hand, and some of them will come up on my leg. And looking at the squirrel's paws and arms, they look, that Dogman or woman, whatever it was, it reminded me more of a squirrel than a raccoon, because of the claws on the squirrel and the way the hands was made with the knuckles and everything in the squirrel's hands. It looked more like a squirrel than a raccoon. After I was able to get a really close look at this thing,
right?
You know, I mean, up close and personal.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yep.
Said it was like everything happened in slow motion, and I had to sit back and think about it. To, you know, did this just happen?
Yeah.
You know, and I had to finally come to my senses and say, okay, look.
Right, you came to terms with it.
You need to deal with this. Your mind's trying to tell you not to deal with it, because it obviously messed up your mind and your sense of reality. So that's why I finally decided that, you know, I would tell my story.
Well, I appreciate it. I really do. And I know it took you a while, and I
had to come to terms with it, Jeff.
Yeah, exactly. And you're courageous for doing that. And I truly appreciate that, because it's people like you and other guests who show the courage to come out and help other people come out and share their encounters. You know, people I've talked to are like, oh, you do such a great thing. I don't do anything. It's you guys. I give you guys a platform to tell your encounters. And you guys are the true heroes of this channel.
Well, I appreciate that, man. And all I can do is just tell what has happened to me in my lifetime.
Right.
You know, and like I said, the first story was that happened to me when I was 5. You know, and I didn't understand it then, and you know, and then I started wondering, you know, is these things following me around? Am I cursed? What's going on? And you know,
right.
But
we got a little bit of time. I want to ask you a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I got about 10 minutes left of record time. When back to the second encounter after this one pushed you against the fence, the one that was in the tree. Now you said it was like about 25 feet up in the tree, roughly.
It was about, I'd say about 30, between 30 and 40 feet. It was up there, pretty good. But the thing is, my property goes downhill. So it would have been probably, now from the ground up, about between 30 and 40 feet. But at the level of the fence in my house, it was about maybe 10, 12 feet if you're looking straight plane across.
Right.
And it was, I don't think it was throwing the sticks at me. I think it was throwing them at the dogs.
Okay.
Because they were at the fence, and it was coming just slightly over the fence, and you could hear them going, bam, when it hit. But I only had to see one. And then, I realized after I had taken the shot, I could have, put one in his head, but I didn't. I didn't know what would be the outcome of that. So, they don't seem to be, aggressive with me.
Now, when he slid down that tree, he kind of gave you like a look. You said he was kind of like a little bent that you didn't spend more time looking at him or whatever as he took off. You said to me privately.
Oh, like when I made the shot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah! As soon as I fired, it blew a chunk out of the tree about 6 inches above his head, and he just, it was almost like he pulled his bottom claws out and just had hand claws. He just come straight down like you'd see somebody rappelling out of a helicopter. I mean, he was just, he was moving.
He had like
he
a
didn't
look
want
of,
nothing else to do with that.
he had like a look of disappointment or something like that when he took off.
Well, he looked at me. It was not really a disappointment. It was like a surprise.
Right. Now, did he go the same way?
I don't think he knew I had a weapon.
Right.
I think what happened was, because I ran back in the house after the second one. The first one hit the roof, and the second one, hit the side of the house. And that's when I was out there and seen it. And that's when I run in. I'm like, oh no, this ain't gonna happen.
Did he go the?
That's when I come in and got it. And when I fired, it was like he gave me a look of surprise, like. He just, his head went directly at me, and I mean, he was already in the slide mode when that happened. He was coming down.
Now, did he take off?
I think he actually knew what had happened. He heard the gun, and I'm sure he got some splatter from tree bark, but he was gone.
Did he take off the same way? Lewis,
shoot him,
Lewis, hang on a second. Did he take off the same direction as the one that had you pushed against the fence? Did they kind of go in that?
No, the one that had me pushed against the fence had went all the way down to the middle of the fence where the gate was, and went off on the other side of my property where my spray booth is, where I used to build hot rods.
Okay.
And went, because there's a patch of, they're probably 15, 20-year-old pines. They're maybe 20 foot tall, and they're not real big around. It's just thick pines right there, and it just went down through there. Now, this one was over at the right side, on the corner where it started, where I was weed eating, and he was in a tree that was directly back behind that corner, kind of off to the right a little bit. There's a couple of big oak trees down there.
Okay.
He was off to the right.
I'm gonna include the picture again. of your yard when there was the, you have it circled. There's one standing kind of like at an angle from your doghouse. And was that roughly?
But this one was different.
Right. Okay.
That one had, it didn't have the dog legs like these other ones. This one had legs that looked like a human, like a Bigfoot, kind of. It didn't have dog legs.
And he was big. He was a big, good size.
Oh, he was the biggest one I've seen.
All right.
I would say he was probably 9 foot tall, probably weighed about 450 pounds or more. He was a big boy.
Yeah. You know,
he had a huge head. And you can see his nose in that picture.
Yeah, you can. You can. I'm going to, when I make it the thumbnail for the video, I'll blow it up a little bit so you guys can see it. You know, you've had quite the active life with these things. The one story, I'm gonna put the links into Lewis's other appearances on here. The one story that I encourage everyone to listen to is all of them, of course, but when he was a police officer, and I'm so fascinated by that one because it just makes your brain just start going and thinking about why they were there and what would have happened if someone had gotten out of the car. And, you know, it just, you've had a really traumatic life with these things. And I truly, I can't say it enough how much I appreciate you coming and sharing that. And I commend you. And you're a very brave gentleman. And thank you. I thank you for your service.
I've done a lot of things. You know, I used to race motorcycles, professional for Honda.
Yep.
And in the mountains one time, I hit a mountain lion while I was running about 50 miles an hour, flipped me over the handlebars and killed it. Yeah, while I was in the middle of a race. So, I mean, I've had some unfortunate incidents.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can say I've been lucky or unlucky.
Right. Well, we're coming up on time, buddy. Thank you again for coming on. And would you like to say a couple last words to everybody before we let go?
Yes. Thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate your time and dealing with me. And thanks to everyone out there that's took the time to listen to my encounters. Like I said, it was hard for me to come out with all of them, but this one was the hardest. But I think everybody should be told that these things are out there. Yeah. I mean, I'm proof of that. You know, I have no reason to lie. And you know, my credibility is on the line because I'm sure, you know, some people know who I am.
Right.
But I want to tell everybody thank you and have a good night and God bless.
Thank you and God bless. I'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right.
You know, it's always a pleasure having guests on. And I really mean that because when someone is on the show or they send in their encounter, it is that encounter shared that helps people. I just have a platform where everyone can share their encounters in a place of no judgment. And that's why sometimes I'm hard when people act a fool in the comment section, is because I don't want judgment here and I don't want negativity here, for the simple fact that I want everyone to be comfortable here. Because if someone tells me that they had an encounter, I'm going to believe them because I wasn't there. And neither was anyone else except that one person. Eventually you feel it out and you're like, oh, okay, maybe. But I have a place where people can share their encounters and help other people. It's like a self-help program. The guy who puts the place together isn't who is helping. It's the other people in that program helping each other. And that's what we do here. We help each other. I've had an encounter. I share it. It helps someone else share their encounter. It's a great symbiotic relationship of encounters. We're like the venom of Dogman. Except we don't eat people in the grocery mart. I want to thank everybody for all of your support through the last couple of years. And we hit 14,000 subscribers during this interview. I never would have thought that was possible, ever. I'm going to go to bed tonight with a big smile on my face and thanking my higher power for putting you guys in my life, because you guys help me on a daily basis. You guys give me a place to vent, to make friends. You know, it's a good thing we got going on here. You know, it's a great community, and I'm truly appreciative of all of you guys. So may the Great Spirit watch over every single one of you, and may He guide you along your way. Farewell, everybody.